Candidates are Kimberly Denil, John Staveness, and Jim Nellen. All three will be on the ballot for general election on Tuesday, April 3rd. Thank you all for running for office and for agreeing to take part in this forum. In a few minutes, you'll have the opportunity to introduce yourselves. Voter service is the #1 priority of the League of Women Voters. We encourage people to run for office. We hold forums such as this one to help voters become better informed so they may vote intelligently. As an organization, we never endorse a candidate or party, but are directly involved in shaping the important issues that keep our community strong. More information about the League can be found on the display table right over there. The views expressed tonight are those of our candidates, not of the League of Women Voters of Door County. And our sponsorship of the forum is not an endorsement of any candidate. We encourage voters to be prepared to vote. Voters can check their voter registration status at myvote.com. This step is especially important if you have not voted in the last couple of years. Remember to bring your photo ID with you to the polls. This candidate forum consists of your anonymous written questions and the candidates' responses. On these question cards that I'm holding right here, we ask you to write questions about things that concern you, your family, and your community. They must focus on community issues, not personalities. Questions must address all candidates. A question posed to only one candidate will not be used. Questions not understood by the screeners will not be asked. Please use a separate card for each question you ask. As you finish writing your question, raise your card. Runners will happily pick them up. If you need one or more cards at any time, just raise your hand and we'll bring them to you. We would like to acknowledge and thank the many people who made this forum possible. First of all, the facilities the town of Sevastopol provided. Recording is by Laddie Chapman. The recording will be aired on the League of Women Voters Door County website and doorbell.net/video. I have the link right here, and I'm going to place this over by the rest of the information if you want to check this out and watch the video. It'll be aired tomorrow night at 7 p.m. You can find it on channel 986. We'd also like to thank the local media for publicity, the League of Women Voter members for helping implement this forum. In the upcoming election, Sturgeon Bay voters will have important decisions to make regarding their votes. In order to ensure that you have the maximum amount of time to hear from the candidates running to represent you, and they each have a fair and equal chance to answer questions important to the community, we have established a format, time, and terms for this forum. All candidates have agreed in advance to use these guidelines. They are listed on the League of Women Voters of Door County Candidate Forum Guidelines handout. To promote a civil atmosphere in which all candidates can respond to questions effectively, we ask that there be no response to candidates' answers, no comments, jeering, cheering, or clapping, or any other form of demonstration. Please turn off or silence your cell phones as a matter of courtesy. Thank you, and now I'm going to turn the forum over to our moderator, Nancy Fisher.
Thank you, Cheryl. Good evening. This will be a forum, not a debate. In order that all candidates have equal time to present their positions, and in fairness for each, League guidelines will be the format for the evening. All candidates have agreed in advance to the same guidelines. Candidates will introduce themselves in 2-minute opening statements. Candidates will be given 2 minutes to answer each question. Each question will be posed to all candidates. However, a candidate may decline to answer any question. No question will be directed to any one person. Candidates have drawn straws to determine who will speak first when the questions begin. However, the order of speaking will be alternated so that each candidate will have a chance to be the first responder. Only written questions will be accepted. League member screeners will review the questions in order to eliminate redundancies and inappropriate questions. If the screeners do not understand the question, it will not be asked. Questions will be asked as they are written. All questions will be made available after the forum to our 3 candidates. Candidates, league timers who are sitting here in the first row will signal when you have 30 seconds remaining in your response, and again when it is time to stop. Thank you, Richard. We ask that the candidates be prepared to stop when signaled to do so. No flash cameras, motor-driven cameras, or other visual or sound recording devices are allowed to be used during a forum other than by the press and media and forum sponsor. Candidates are not allowed to use the audio or video for commercial advertising. We will ask questions until 8 p.m. or until we run out of questions, whichever comes first. Candidates will then have 5 minutes to elaborate on any issue during closing remarks. We will now begin the forum with candidates making their 2-minute introductory remarks. We will go alphabetically. Ms. Denil, if you will start.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. My name is Kimberly Denil. I have lived and worked in the county for 30 years. My husband and I are not only residents of the town of Sevastopol for 14 years, we are business owners as well. We have been in business for over 12 years. We have 3 children, one of which is an Air Force pilot and currently deployed. I have always worked in accounting and management. I have over 25 years of experience in accounting, human resources, and management. I have a paralegal degree, and I also hold an accounting degree. I am registered with the State of Wisconsin Department of Financial Institutions as a notary public. I am also certified in small business bookkeeping, and I've had schooling specific to government and nonprofit tax and budgeting, as well as business finance and budgeting. In addition to my classes and training in accounting, I have also taken team building and problem solving classes, leadership development, and legal issues for supervisors. I have written credit policies and procedures and have set up accountability checks to ensure proper procedures are being followed. I am currently employed as an accounting clerk for a local nonprofit that is a nationwide organization. I am responsible for reconciling multiple checking accounts and credit cards for our staff that is located nationwide. I also process all the accounts payable, sales, and use for several states in addition to other responsibilities. As far as being a candidate for the town supervisor, I can offer financial budget knowledge, in addition to being a solid and participating member of the board and bring forth concerns of the citizens. I am able to look at different sides of situations and help decide what is in the best interest of the citizens of the township. I would especially like to see the community more involved and participating in the monthly meetings and really coming together for a common good. I am not a politician. I have never run for an elected office, but I will vote and push for what is right and in the best interest of the community, and I would appreciate your vote of confidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Denil. Mr. Nellen.
Thank you. And I appreciate being able to come to talk to you tonight. This is a low silhouette race, and it's through the efforts of the League of Women Voters that we have the opportunity of telling you who we think we are, and you can ask questions and find out perhaps to your own satisfaction as to who we really are. I grew up in De Pere. I went to high school and grade school in De Pere. I grew up in the town of De Pere, in the rural part of the town, surrounded by dairy farms. De Pere, when I grew up, is a great deal like Sevastopol is today. After I went to college, and between college and law school, I worked for the U.S. Department of Defense in Washington in international security affairs. I then went to law school. After law school, I returned to Wisconsin, and I worked in private practice for a few years, but then spent the bulk of my life working for corporations as inside counsel. I was general counsel for Fort Howard Paper Company in Green Bay for 20 years until it was purchased by James River. I then was president of Ameritech Wisconsin until it was purchased by SBC. After that, I was general counsel for Smithfield Foods, which is the old Packerland Packing in Green Bay, and until they were purchased by a large Brazilian company, JBS. I then went to work for Smithfield and until they were purchased by a Chinese company. My wife and I have had property in Door County for 20 years. We are full-time residents up here. My wife and I have been married for 34 years. We have a son. Through the Bay Shore Property Owners Association, I started attending the town board meetings, and I found them fascinating. They're very interesting. I very much would enjoy
Could
representing the
we
people.
wrap it up, please?
Yes, I
Or-
am.
Okay.
Good.
Great. And we've had a request to ask our candidates to speak up a little bit so that everyone in the back of the rows can hear you. And Mr. Staveness.
Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, my name is John Staveness. I've lived in Sevastopol for 30 years, and I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come for this candidate forum. I'm running for re-election to the Town Board of Sevastopol, as I've been a board member for the last 14 years. And I think Sevastopol is a great community to live in and raise a family. It is important to me to preserve that for future generations. As a board member, I will continue to have input on how tax dollars are spent and keep taxes low. 10 of those 14 years, I have been chairman of the Plan Commission. This commission is made up of 7 members from the community. One of their main goals of the committee is to oversee variances and report back to the town board, which will help ensure that wonderful things that Sevastopol has to offer will continue for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Here is our first question, and Mr. Staveness will begin with the answering. Where do you see the town of Sevastopol in 2 years? In 5 years? What progress do you see?
The progress is in 2 years. I would say that we would have more money to renegotiate the contract with the Sturgeon Bay Fire Department, because we would have this town hall paid off and we would work on that. The growth, I'm hoping that there's a lot of people that want to come and live out here because of the beauty. In 5 years, I think that 5 years down the road, we would have better roads, nice clean water, and try to keep it as rural as it is right now. So I'm hoping that there's growth, but I'm hoping that the growth stays under control. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Denil, where do you see the town of Sevastopol in 2 years and in 5 years? What progress do you see?
I agree with John. The building will be paid for shortly, and I would like to see the town maintain a solid budget. With the new winery going in, I think that'll give us another fantastic tax base in addition to what we already have. I think in looking at the Sturgeon Bay Fire Department contract, we have some highly trained first responders in our area. Our firefighters are just as trained as Sturgeon Bay. They are taking the same classes, trained the same way. I think we could save a decent amount of money in looking at some local services. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Nellen, where do you see the town of Sevastopol in 2 years? And in 5 years, what progress do you see?
My sense is that in 2 years, the town will be very much like it is today. We'll probably have increased number of residents. There is, I think, with regard to where the town is going to be 5 or 10 years from now, I've gone out and I've knocked on nearly 500 doors. And I've asked people what they think about the town and where they see the town going. And the responses I get are interesting. They're all over the map. What you hear time and time again is they want to retain the rural character of the town. That's important. It's reflected in the comprehensive plan that was created 10 years ago. What the town might look at 5 or 10 years from now, I think is in part going to be determined by the next comprehensive plan, which, as I understand it, the town board is going to commence that exercise sometime this summer. I think the last comprehensive plan involved a very large cross-section of people. And I have no reason to think that this won't be the same thing. And I think out of that, we'll have a sense as to what the town won't necessarily be 5 or 10 years, but what people would like it to look like 5 or 10 years from now. I'm not clairvoyant. I don't really know. We haven't seen all that much, all of that much growth in the town. And I've had people tell me that they ask, why that is. Is that necessarily etched in stone? I don't necessarily know. I'm not sure we're going to see all sorts of commercial development unless we all go out of our way and make that happen. But I really think it's important that we pay a lot of attention to what comes out of the 10-year plan, because that's going to help guide us. Thank you.
Thank you. For question number 2, we will start with Mr. Nellen, then go to Ms. Denil, and then Mr. Staveness. Question 2, what issue or issues regarding the town do you want to have addressed or are interested in helping with?
As I've gone around and I, knocked on all of these several hundred homes, talked to probably 250, 300 people, one of the questions I ask them is, from your perspective, how do you view the town? And the reaction I get almost uniformly, there are a couple of outliers, is the town is well managed. People feel that the town board acts responsibly, that they feel the town board is very sensitive to undertaking services in an efficient and effective manner, and that the town board is loath to look at an increase in the tax rate. One of the problems that comes up, though, are roads. And I don't get the sense from talking to people that people are angry about the condition of the roads, but they are concerned, and there are, depending on where you are in the town, there's greater concern about the roads. Some people complain about washboarding in some areas. We've got 40 miles of roads, and it's important for us to maintain those roads on a regular basis, and they cost money. And what's happened over the last several years is the cost of roads has gone up, but our ability to fund the roads has not gone up. And I think the board is loath, as I am too, to increase taxes. So we're going to have to look at roads and figure out how we're going to maintain those roads. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Denil, what issue or issues regarding the town do you want to have addressed or are willing to help with?
I think the biggest thing would be more community involvement. At several of the meetings, people come and address whatever agenda item pertains to them, and then they leave. I really would like to see a more extensive discussion on agenda items. Another thing that I think would be fantastic for our community, because we do have a large elderly community, would be some sort of a neighbor helping neighbor program. Not a funding program or not, emergency money, that sort of thing. But I think that it would be a fantastic resource to have for some of our people that are either single or unable to do something themselves. I think it would just contribute a lot to the community to have that available for them. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Staveness, what issue or issues regarding the town do you want to have addressed or are interested in helping with?
I think one of the big ones is, Mr. Nellen touched on it with the roads, is when I first got on the board, we were putting over $200,000 into the road budget, and that was doing probably about 3 miles of roads, maybe 4. And now with the cutting back of the budget and not being able to raise it, and the price going up, because it costs almost $90,000 for 1 mile of road right now. So one of the bigger issues is to get the roads back in shape and you know, we try to get as many as we can with the budget, and we do the best we can right now. So we're just going to have to find a way to fund some more of that, or to work out, maybe put some things on hold to get the roads back in shape. So, thank you.
Thank you. Question 3, the order of answering will be Ms. Denil, Mr. Staveness, and Mr. Nellen. The question is, what are your thoughts of a fire station building on this property? Ms. Denil.
I think that this is something that has been brought up in the last couple of years, and with the anticipation of this building being paid for, the money would be more readily available in our budget. As I mentioned, I think that that would be a huge asset to our community. We have a lot of highly trained local gentlemen and ladies that are first responders, that are trained in fire safety, and I think that that would be definitely something that we should look into, and I think it would save us a lot of money in our budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Staveness.
Thank you. We did a feasibility study on this about 3 years ago, and we were trying to get maybe the town of Jacksonport and the town of Egg Harbor to split with Sturgeon Bay. The feasibility study came back that in order to do Sevastopol justice, we would need 2 fire stations and about 45 people. So at that time, it didn't seem realistic that we could go through with that. With the people that are working out, there's not a lot of farmers anymore that have the time to come and to be volunteers. So as of right now, yes, it'd be nice to have our own fire station and our own fire department, but I don't think it's in the works for a while, so. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Nellen, what are your thoughts of a fire station building on this property?
I echo what John said. I talked to a couple of the folks who had been on the town board when they ran their feasibility study. And I think going in, there was an honest interest in seeing if we could build a fire, whether or not we could build a fire station to serve our needs rather than purchasing those services from the city of Sturgeon Bay. But the numbers just didn't work out. It's immensely costly to build the structures. The fire engines themselves are very expensive. And what Sturgeon Bay has, and make it clear, I mean, there is a downside dealing with Sturgeon Bay too, because we purchase fire services and they're expensive. But Sturgeon Bay has a core of full-time firefighters, and that's very important. What I hear from talking to people, as well as what I read in the paper, is that and it's not just here, it's not just Door County, it's throughout the entire state. You get fewer and fewer younger people who want to be or can be volunteer firemen. And as the volunteer fire personnel age, what they can do, and their ability to get on the roof of a barn at 3 o'clock in the morning on a winter evening, you got to ask yourself how many people are going to want to do that going in the future. And you need a plentiful, you need a large number of volunteer firemen, most of whom are young. I think the sheer cost of running, of us operating our own fire department is probably not on the cards. But having said that, there's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't go back and re-examine that, take another look at the costs, and see whether or not we can do something in collaboration with other towns. Thank you.
Thank you. For question 4, the order of response will be Mr. Staveness, Mr. Nellen, and Ms. Denil. Question 4, our cable channel is the only one in Door County outside of Sturgeon Bay and carries many government and community events that Green Bay TV ignores. What would you do to preserve or enhance this facility? Mr. Staveness?
To preserve the cable channel is what you're asking?
That is the question, our cable channel. Yes.
Okay. We have a very good cable channel. Mr. Chapman runs that. We have a committee that takes care of it. They They decide what to put on it and how to do that, to improve it. I think it's running very smoothly right now. I think more channels, more viewing would be a better thing. But other than that, I would have to, say that it's running really good. It runs 24 hours a day on the same channel, so I don't really know. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nellen, what would you do to preserve or enhance the cable channel facility?
I'm going to take off where John left off. I think having a cable channel is helpful. I think that the fact that all of the town board meetings are filmed and are available, I think furthers the transparency we'd all like to see in government. It almost doesn't matter how many people watch it. It's the fact that it's there, and I think it has a disciplining effect on everyone, because this is open government, and you can come and hear what people have to say. I know the genesis of this issue because I talked to Laddie. The way it works now is that the town gets about something like $25,000, $30,000 in franchise fees from the cable channel service, and three-quarters of those fees are then used to support the cable channel. There isn't $1 of tax money that goes into it, but as I understand it, the cable companies are lobbying the state legislature to terminate those fees, which means that we wouldn't have any money to support the cable channel system. And my hope is that we're in the closing days of this legislative session. That's not going to get acted on by the legislature. In the next year or two, in the next session of the legislature, I think that knowing full well if the cable companies are trying to eliminate that source of revenue, which is the only source of revenue we have to support the cable channel system, I think that means we've got to look out and see whether or not there are alternatives short of using tax money. And that, unfortunately, I just don't see is in the cards. I think it's a great idea. The question is, what can we do to preserve it? Thank you.
And Ms. Denil, what would you do to preserve or enhance the cable channel facility?
I think Laddie's doing a fantastic job. I think it is a great service to our town. It's my understanding that the equipment is paid for by the town, so I would also like to know a little bit more about when that equipment is leaving, how our town is benefiting from that. Are citizens getting any income back from that? What's being contributed to our town? I think that we just need to make sure that the equipment is being used properly and the town is benefiting, as the town did pay for that, and what we can do better in the future as far as other services that are being offered and current services that are being offered. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 5, the response order will be Mr. Nellen, Ms. Denil, and Mr. Staveness. Question 5, the town's comprehensive plan is due for update by next fall. Do you foresee changes that might be of cultural and/or economic value? Mr. Nellen.
I think that's a very legitimate question. I don't know what the answer is, because I think the comprehensive plan, if it's truly to be a comprehensive plan and be a reflection of the general sentiments of the community, needs to be developed using a process that brings all of those differing views and see if you can reach some commonality. My guess is that just as the underlying principle expressed in the last comprehensive plan was to maintain the livable nature, the rural nature of Sevastopol, I'm guessing that's based on what I've learned from talking to people is that remains a very strong sentiment. And I think that what will emerge from that plan will be a reflection of the views of the people who participate. And I just think that it would be a little bold of me to venture an opinion as to what that will look. I'm sure I will have a thought, but I think it will be measured against the other views exhibited or expressed by by any number of people. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Denil, the town's comprehensive plan is due for update next fall. Do you foresee changes that might be of cultural and/or economic value?
I think the biggest change would be the economic value. As we've mentioned, the building will be paid for by then, and I think that will open up an extensive amount of options for us. And I think that we should really just take our time and make sure we have all the information and all the suggestions are in. We want to make sure that we have all the information before any decisions are made and what would be the best interests of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Denil. Mr. Staveness.
Thank you. Yeah, the comprehensive plan, we are working on, we have hired Bay Lake Regional Planning to get hopefully a grant, which is a 50-50 matching grant from the state of Wisconsin. The previews that he has given us is that our old comprehensive plan was big and cumbersome, and the new one is going to be smaller and streamlined. So I think as the chairman of the Plan Commission, I think it'll be a lot easier to work with, a lot easier to get references from. As far as what's going to change, that's up to the people that, hopefully come to the public hearings. And, like the first one we went through, we had a little coloring contest, and everybody drew a line and drew in the colors where they wanted to have growth, where they wanted to have farmland. So, there was, I think, 3 or 4 public hearings to make the first one. So I'm hoping that everybody comes to the second one and we have a majority of the people have an input on the second one. It's to update it. Thank you.
Thank you. For question 6, the response order will be Ms. Denil, Mr. Staveness, Mr. Nellen. Question 6, what prompted you to run for this position? Ms. Denil.
I think the biggest thing is I would like to be more involved in the community. I'm really at a point in my life where I feel that I can give more of myself, and all of our children are grown, so they're 3 adult children, and I just want to be more involved and be a service to the community and do whatever I can to help.
Thank you. What prompted you to run for this position, Mr. Staveness?
When I first ran for this position, I was the crew chief of the first responders, and I did not like how some of the things were going, so I thought rather than just sit back and say, oh well, I decided to run so that I had a voice, and I ran and I won. So I am very passionate about the first responders, so that really was one of my big decisions to run. So thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Nellen, what prompted you to run for this position?
I've always been interested in government. When I was a young boy, my father would take me to the town board meetings in the town of De Pere. And about the only issues were plowing roads, maintaining the roads, and what are you going to do about noxious weeds. In some regards, things haven't changed in the intervening years, but since I've started going to the town board meetings, I've really been interested in what the issues are. There are issues of great concern to the 2,700 people who live in this community, and they're issues that we can deal with. They're within our control. We can play a real role in helping this community grow in the direction that people want it to go. I'm on the Town Plan Commission, and John is our chair, and that also has been fascinating to see the issues that come forward, the people who have proposals for, they're willing, interested in making an economic investment in the community. It's a wonderful place to live, and I would very much like to be part of it, and I think I can contribute to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 7, the order of response will be Mr. Staveness, Mr. Nellen, and Ms. Denil. Question 7, will you make yourself available and be responsive in a timely manner to citizens who respectfully address you with questions, concerns, and criticism? And would you allow public input to be constructively contributed at town meetings? Mr. Staveness.
Yes, I will make myself available. I have a home phone number. Anybody can call me at that time, at that number. I have a cell phone. I have an email address. And public input at public meetings, yes, we do have that on the agenda where the public can speak to a non-agenda item, or when they are at that agenda item, then they can speak at that time. So.
Thank you. Right. Mr. Nellen, will you make yourself available in a timely manner to citizens who respectfully address you with questions?
Of course, I think you need to be. You have to do that. And I think I've demonstrated by the fact that I've been spending the last few weeks knocking on doors, avoiding nasty dogs, and being pretty successful at it. I think that it's terribly important that we be attuned to what people want, what they're interested in. And it's a small enough community that people can verbalize their views. And I don't think they're afraid of doing it. I would reiterate what I said before. You know, it's an unscientific poll because not everyone is at home, and probably won't talk to all 2,500 adult residents of the town. But the general view is that people believe very strongly that we need to maintain the character of the community. They want it to be livable. They want it to be a place that they can raise kids. They'd like to see growth, and they want to keep taxes as low as possible. But having said that, there are a whole panoply of concerns people have. And you ask them, and some people say, gee, wouldn't it be nice, for instance, if we could perhaps, on behalf of people who have got wood waste, they don't know what to do with it, they don't live on a farm, they might want, could they be able to drop it off at the resource center in Sturgeon Bay? Other people have raised other issues. I think that I find it pretty invigorating to hear what people have to say. And I would say, except for one instance where a person took after me in the town board, everyone is incredibly pleasant to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Denil, would you make yourself available and be responsive? And would you allow public input to be constructively contributed at town meetings?
Absolutely. I think by running that you are already putting yourself out there and making sure that you're available. I actually have brochures with me with my cell phone on it. If anybody would like to give me a call, if they have questions on different, what my views are on different options. I think it's extremely important for the public to have a say, and the only way to encourage the community to get involved is to make sure that they feel like their opinion is going to be considered, that it's going to make a difference, and that it's going to matter. So, thank you.
Thank you. For question 8, the order of response will be Ms. Denil, Mr. Staveness, and Mr. Nellen. Question 8, how would you promote civility among board members and between board members and the community? Ms. Denil.
I think that the biggest thing is everybody needs to be able to have their own opinion. They should not feel pressured into voting a certain way just because somebody feels that that's how they should be voting. They should make their own decisions, make up their own mind. Everybody has their own mind. They can think for themselves. And I think everybody just really needs to work together. I feel like there is a lot of working against the people instead of with the people. And I think that that is one of the biggest things that could improve, is that we should be here as a service to enrich the lives of the community and not just as a governing body.
Thank you. Mr. Staveness, how would you promote civility?
I think we have a very good working group right now, and I think that any candidates that come on would be able to work together too. Like Kimberly said, that information is the key, where if everybody, just took the time and listened to everybody else, and then after that make the decision, and keep a nice, cool, calm head, I think everything would work out just fine. So, thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Nellen, how would you promote civility?
I spent the first 6-7 years of my life as a labor negotiator. I was a management labor attorney, and I spent a lot of time in negotiations with the Teamsters, the paper workers, the aluminum workers, the industrial workers. And you can mean civility. Everyone understood that the employer had certain interests, and everyone understood that the union had certain legitimate interests. The key to it, I think, was, and people do get exercised, and they can express themselves emphatically, but if you don't challenge the basis of the other person, if you don't attribute bad motives to what he has, if you understand and appreciate that the person with whom you're negotiating, and the person who, because we're all old enough to realize that almost everything we do, including sometimes with our kids, is a matter of negotiations, and you don't want to have. You want to conduct them in a way in which parties are left with the feeling that they were able to present their views, and they were entertained, and they maintained their dignity, and their motives weren't attacked. One of the problems we've got, I think, what's happening on the national level is that it's a sense of tribalism. It's not that I'm opposed to your idea. It's oftentimes I dislike you as a person, and I doubt the moral underpinnings of what you're saying. And it drives people to opposite sides, and to the point where it's almost impossible to negotiate a resolution. I don't think that has to be. I think if you respect people and understand that everyone has differing interests, but somehow or another you're going to come out of this with a negotiated arrangement, I think that will carry the day. Thank you.
Thank you. For question 9, the order of response will be Mr. Nellen, Ms. Denil, and Mr. Staveness. Question 9, in Sevastopol, would you be willing to address avenues to help small businesses thrive? And how would you feel you could do this? Mr. Nellen.
We have multiple programs. Banks will oftentimes be able to assist small business people in getting SBA loans if there is such a size that the bank itself chooses not to extend credit. I think that there are programs at our level, which is the town board level. What we can do is be hospitable to people who want to start businesses and understand that there is nothing that benefits us and the people in this community by putting up obstacles for people who want to go into business. Where that doesn't mean we're cheerleaders. It simply means that we'll carry out our responsibilities, and we want to see business. We want to see economic activity in the town. Let me add one thing, though. There are certain situations in which we have, depending on where that economic activity is going to occur, we have to be aware of whether or not the zoning permits that activity. And there are certain instances in which the zoning clearly doesn't permit it, and there are other instances in which zoning may permit it, but subject to conditional uses. And I think the town has a legitimate interest in certain situations to place limits on enterprises that are mindful of maintaining the rural nature of the community, and we just need to be mindful that we aren't creating a situation that we're placing too much stress on the roads. Now, I'm not saying that's occurring. I am saying that we've got to be mindful of it, because we are subject to a zoning code. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Denil, would you be willing to address avenues to help small businesses thrive, and how would you feel you could do this?
Well, as a business owner, obviously, I think that working with the small businesses is extremely important, not only for the existing ones, for any new ones that would be willing to come in. By getting new businesses, we not only get more income from sales and use tax, but it's also bringing more people on our roads and possibly bringing more customers to the existing businesses. As far as zoning, I think that there's always some compromise, some give and take, as with anything, but I think we should be working with any businesses that are willing to come in and accommodating them and seeing what we can do to help them.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Staveness, would you be willing to address avenues to help small businesses?
Yes, I would be all for having small businesses come into Sevastopol in the right zoned area, because that's, there was, I think, 10 to 15 people that went through a lot of meetings to work on the comprehensive plan, and there's a lot of public input in there, and it clearly drew out to a certain extent where the businesses need to grow, and if it is in those areas or close to those areas, the town board would, not put up any roadblocks to deter them from coming in. So, and we would try to help them as much as we could. I'm sure we could probably not help them with our budget, with money, but in any other way we could help, we certainly would. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, question 10. The order will be Mr. Staveness, Mr. Nellen, and Ms. Denil. What will you do as a member of the board to ensure that a younger generation participates in local government? Mr. Staveness.
That's a tough one. The trouble with the younger people are all moving out. Out of the county. We need to figure out a way how to get more affordable housing, get more good paying jobs, to keep the youth here. And in that aspect, yes, it would be nice that they would go into government. I know there's a legislative days or a youth in government where they have I don't know what exactly age they are, but they do have them come over from the school and vote, and try to get them involved that way. So other than trying to keep our youth here and getting them involved in the government, I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nellen, what will you do as a member of the board to ensure that a younger generation participates in local government?
I think that you start with, when they're youngsters, get them involved in government. Make them understand that they can have an effect on government. That government, if it operates properly, is responsive to people's interests, felt needs. I think that starting at the high school level and even younger, teaching basic courses in civics can be helpful. What we can do as a board is, I suppose, if you identify younger people in the community, as ask them if they want to get involved in government. Ask them if they, depending on whether they got the time free, if they are willing to serve on any of the committees that the town has. I think that's another way. We have, and it's not just a problem with Door County, it's throughout the entire state. We lose a lot of people when they're 18, and we lose an awful lot of people when they leave, when they graduate from school. They go off, they do something. What we do have, and statistically, it's very provable, we have a significant number of people who come back to Wisconsin, back to their home communities in their late 20s and early 30s. I think it's a testament to the fact that they're drawn back to their home communities. I think that those people who are coming back, I think they give them the opportunity to participate in government. Maybe we should be more knowledgeable who they are and see if they can go out, reach out to them and see if they are interested in getting involved in local government. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Denil, what would you do as a member of the board to ensure that a younger generation participates in local government?
I think the biggest thing would be encouraging the young people to vote and educating them on the importance of voting, making them realize that once their voice is heard, that it's the only way that they can make a difference. They need to learn that the only way something will change or improve is by stepping forward and making the proper contacts and taking action. And that's something that we need to help them with and encourage them if they do have comments, if they do have concerns. That's something that we should make them feel welcome to bring forward. Thank you.
Thank you. For question 11, the response order will be Mr. Nellen, Ms. Denil, and Mr. Staveness. Question 11. My question is about how the dollars from room tax are used. My understanding is that it helps reduce the mortgage on this building. How does this promote tourism? Mr. Nellen.
This issue was put to me very directly and very enthusiastically by one person who actually took me up. And I said, I knocked on her door, we engaged in a conversation, she raised the subject, and I said, well, call me, we'll talk about it, and she did. I'm not aware of the history that surrounded the adoption of the room tax program in Door County. I have heard two differing stories about what happened. There does appear to be among certain people, at least one person in particular, and she's very articulate, she said that the understanding was that a certain portion of the room tax that was rebated to the town would be used to promote tourism. And she had a very strong view as to what that money should be devoted to. Other people have said a portion of that money should be devoted to supporting the local tourist board. What the town board has done, in fact, is to take those receipts and put it into a dedicated account to pay down the cost of this building. And I think that has been, and then this is all a prelude to what happens 2 years from now when the building is fully paid off. And I, to a certain extent, what I sense is happening is that people are angling for that money. It's roughly $100,000. Interestingly enough, $100,000 is a lot of money, but as a percentage of the town expenses, it's not that great. And we have other issues that I'm going off to talking about roads for a second. There are going to be a lot of claims for that.
Sorry, we have to ask you to stop.
Sure.
Okay. Ms. Denil, room tax usage, what are your thoughts?
I know that there has been a lot of discussion lately about the taxes that are being collected by Airbnb of homes and residents that are being rented out within our community. I know that is something that is being worked on currently, not only at a local level, but at a state level. And I think it would be important to take a look at that and see if that money is going into advertising. Is it going back into our community? Is it what is it being used for exactly. As far as what I would change, like I said, the tracking I think is the biggest thing, and I think that we need to really take a solid look at that and determine how many homes in our community are being rented out and who is gaining from that. Are the residents of the community gaining? Is it just the taxpayer? Or is it just Airbnb? So, thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Staveness,
Thank you.
dollars from the room tax that help reduce the mortgage on this building, how does that promote tourism?
Well, the 30% that we get is paying for this building, yes, and that brings taxes to the general public, eases them. So the other 70% goes to the tourism zone, and so out of all the 100%, they're getting 70, we're getting 30, and we are paying for this building. And there is a lot of interest in that money because everybody and his brother is coming out of the woodwork because the payment on these buildings is almost done and everybody wants a piece of that pie. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. For question 12, the order of response will be Ms. Denil, Mr. Staveness, and Mr. Nellen. This is the final question of the evening. Recently, the board was against a new winery, but the county board supported it. Do you think that opposition will scare away future businesses from wanting to come to Sevastopol? What do you think the town should do to attract more business? Ms. Denil.
I think that obviously encouraging new businesses is the proper avenue. It not only benefits the community with sales and use tax, but it's also going to bring in more customers and potentially new residents. As far as the hassle that they had to put up with, I don't agree with that. As a business owner, I did write a letter in support of the winery. Like I said, with anything, there are give and take on any issues, but I think we should do everything we can to encourage new businesses and not make them feel like it's going to be a long, either a legal battle or a big hassle for them to come to our community. I think we need to be more open and just make them feel welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Staveness, recently the board was against a new winery. Do you think that opposition will scare away future businesses from wanting to come to Sevastopol?
No, I don't think it will. I think one of the biggest reasons that some of the board members, including me, was against it is because it was not in the right place per the comprehensive plan. I know the comprehensive plan is a guideline, but we have the corridor and we have the area around Institute and Valmy, and we were just hoping that that would be where the businesses grow. So it goes back to, the comprehensive plan that everybody worked on, and that was one of the reasons why there was some opposition against it. So, thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Nellen, do you think the opposition to a new winery will scare away future businesses from wanting to come to Sevastopol?
I don't. And I think that there's only so much we can do as a community to promote business development. In my prior jobs, I built a plant in China and one in Hong Kong, and we built a mill in Georgia, and we were going to build a packing plant in somewhere either in western Oklahoma or Texas. And there are so many things that a community can't do to promote itself. A lot of it depends on what's the company looking for. And what companies are looking for are pretty basic. They're looking for honest government. They're looking for government in which it's all spelled out what's required of them, so there are no hidden traps. They want a good, strong workforce. They want good infrastructure. They want the availability of resources. And we've got a lot of that. This is a great place to do business. We have good, clean government, both at the local and the state level. The 4-lane road from Sturgeon Bay to Green Bay. There are, electricity rates are pretty reasonable. We have an awful lot of things that we can use to promote economic development. At the same token, it's difficult to go out there and attract people because they've got a million places they can go, and oftentimes businesses will go where they think, transportation is very important, and where they're going to sell the product is very important. I don't think what happened with regard to the winery, and I was opposed to it also as a member of the Plan Commission, I don't think is going to mean a whit, because we're standalone issues.
Thank you. All right, we are at the time for closing statements. Each candidate has 5 minutes to make your closing remarks, and we'll reverse the order from the opening remarks. So we'll start with Mr. Staveness, then Mr. Nellen, and conclude with Ms. Denil.
Go ahead.
So, Mr. Staveness.
Okay, first, I would like to thank the previous board members for supporting the Town of Sevastopol First Responders, which I am a member of since the start of 1994. It gives me great opportunity to help people in a time of need. And in closing, I will keep taxes low, preserve the rural character of Sevastopol. It's not going to be easy, but with planning, communication, and consideration of our townspeople, we can keep Sevastopol a great place to live and to raise a family. Thank you for allowing me to serve on the town board, and appreciate your continued support. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nellen.
I want to thank you very much for the opportunity of speaking to you. I would reiterate what I said before. This is a great place to live. It's a great place to raise children. Nothing remains the same. We all know that. Change is inevitable. What we'd like to do as change occurs is to preserve the things we like the most about the community, the things that draw people here, and the rural nature, the ease of getting around. I think that we can accommodate change and yet preserve the things that we most enjoy about this community. I don't think those changes, the goal of development and saving what we think is good about this community, I don't think that those are inhospitable. I think they can, you can accommodate both, but it requires some effort. I would very much enjoy the opportunity of representing the townspeople on the Board of Supervisors. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Denil.
I'm certainly not going to take 5 minutes, but thank you again, everybody, for joining us this evening and for taking the time out of your schedules to come here and listen to us. As I've stated, I think the biggest thing is to make each community member realize the importance of speaking up and feeling like they can make a difference and participating in our meetings. I believe that we can all work together with our community members to enrich the lives of the residents and continue to improve the community. And I will always vote in what's in the best interest of the community. And if there's an issue that's coming up, I would appreciate your feedback prior to a vote or prior to a meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. You are invited to remain after the forum to give the public an opportunity to meet and visit with you personally. And to audience members and viewers, we hope this forum has been helpful to you as a voter and trust that you are better informed to vote intelligently. Thanks to all of you for attending and participating. Thank you, candidates, for being willing to run for office and serve if elected. Please join me in a round of applause for all our candidates.